It's just me and Night
Come
Eyes.
back.
Woof, woof.
Welcome back. We're the Book Mavens. I'm Amanda. She's Rachel. And we are in the Summer of Hobb. We are reading all 16 of the Elderlings series by Robin Hobb. We're currently in Book 2 of the Farseer's Trilogy, Royal Assassin. It's the second book in the overall Elderling series. This one is a hot mess of a video. So
yes, it is.
If you are reading along with us and you have not finished, you need to stop immediately.
There will be spoilers from the get-go.
Right, like right out of the gate, guys. So that was your only warning. It's hard to keep it all straight because it's all happening at the same time. So to explain it in a way that is linear and clear is very difficult. So what we're saying is you need to go read this yourself so that you can understand our ramblings
Yes.
about this book and our frustrations, because this is a frustrating book. Okay.
Almost halfway done, and it is quite a ride. So there's been a lot of character development and plot in terms of Fitz just kind of becoming a man. I feel like that's a really big highlight happening. My big thing, of course, is his relationship with the wolf. So that was my big thing in terms of reading the first book that I really wanted to see. Is he going to develop a more complex relationship with an animal, like a wild animal? And since the cover kind of gave it away a little bit, there's a wolf in the background. And I'm like, ooh, I hope so. I was really wanting to get some like White Fang vibes, a little Jack London. So I was happy to see that playing out. And I don't know if it's just me, but for some reason, every time I read these interactions when he's using the wit and he is now bonded to Night Eyes. First it was Cub, and then Night Eyes. He just changed the name. Or that was his actual name given to him by his mother, the wolf. So Night Eyes, that he's just, I hear in my head the voice of Doug from the Pixar film Up. Like, we're a pack now, right? Let's go hunt together, right? Like, something about it echoes Doug, and I don't think that that's probably what Robin Hobb intended for his voice to sound like, but for something there's some eagerness to it that just reminds me of Doug from Up. And now that I've said that, now that's what you'll hear in your head most likely. But that is something that I really I've really enjoyed, this connection and this idea that Night Eyes isn't going to give up on this pack idea, and that Fitz is his pack leader, and what that means to truly represent a pack and the duties associated with it. I feel like this is something where it's really pushing Fitz to grow up and take responsibility and have some kind of accountability. And so I'm really liking that development.
Oh, Night Eyes.
The wolf comes through and repels other people through Fitz as well. I mean, the wolf really comes in clutch several times. Like,
he does. He saves him.
He's a pinch hitter.
Many times. I mean, when they fight against the forged ones, it's very interesting. And he's just so... I do hear that internal dialogue that they have as the voice of Doug from Up.
I do love Doug from Up. I don't. I did. It wasn't until you said it that I was like, he's like a more incredulous version of Doug, because he's like, why? But why? But we're pack. Like, but we're pack. Why do you want to do that? He does these things in a very simple, straightforward way.
Very black and white.
Yeah, they talk about that a lot. That like basically a wolf remembers the bare minimum.
He lives in the present, which is such a different aspect, I think, for Fitz, because everything Fitz does in terms of his assassin work and everything else, it's about lining pieces up for some future outcome. And so everything with the wolf is enjoying the present and just kind of being in the moment. And I love this idea, this brotherhood he has with Night Eyes.
And then his relationship with Molly, which is super cute, just like it should be. And misunderstandings that kind of, it has a bit of a YA quality to it. just a lot of misunderstandings. And then they come together, and it's sweet. And of course, there's a scene where they physically come together, but it's written so beautifully, in a very sensitive, romantic way. It's not very detailed, which is kind of like, that's fine for some books to have a really detailed sex scene. It doesn't do that. It's very soft. It's very romantic. It's very Fitz-like in terms of how he feels about Molly. So I really appreciated that. And then
okay, so many things happen in this book. We sum up. Sort of. We try.
It's very dense.
Yeah, we try to sum up. Okay. There's several arcs. Let's talk about the arc with the skill. Okay, the skill, Verity's really the only one left in this book who has mastered and is able to really use the skill in a way that allows them to defend themselves against the Red Ship Raiders. The king has become so ill that he basically can't maintain it. So Verity is really the only one bearing this burden. So the ships are almost done, and he's getting ready to launch them, but Verity wants a way that he can communicate with the ships more quickly. So he decides that he's going to train Fitz to receive messages from the skill and to allow Verity to be in his mind with him. So basically Verity will be able to see through Fitz's eyes and hear what Fitz hears. So he described it really kind of interestingly when it finally clicked as bowls sitting inside of each other in a cabinet. That Verity's mind just kind of nestles on top of his mind, and it's not very obtrusive once he gets the hang of it. It takes a lot of training. He switches weapons. Berg teaches him to use an axe instead of a sword, which turns out to be his
works for him.
Yeah, his comparative advantage, if you will. The econ. But can't help myself. But in doing that, he also teaches Fitz to shield, because Fitz we did not talk about Galen in the last book, but Galen was the skill master who originally tried to train Fitz, but did it in an incredibly traumatic way and failed, basically. But in that process, because he was trying.
Purposefully to destroy Fitz's mind.
Yeah, and he broke a part of Fitz's mind, so now Fitz is not able to really use the skill to reach out. So because he is just very naturally gifted with this skill, because of his being part of the Farseer line, they have a natural proclivity for it. He has, he just sporadically kind of blasts his consciousness into people. He's skilling, not in a way that he can really control. And that keeps coming up in very awkward ways for poor Verity, who comes in one night and he's basically, who is this girl that you keep dreaming about every night because you're really keeping me up? And you got to shield your mind. And he's like, oh my gosh. So he teaches him to shield his mind. The coterie comes back in. So the coterie is the group that was trained by Galen in the last book that Fitz flunked out of. And they still never really mastered the skill like Verity. At best, they're messengers.
Well, it's a corrupt form of using the skill that Galen had figured out on his own and taught them. And they're able to siphon off the skill energy from others. Well, there's 3 of them really left, and one of them is able to just kind of ride along as a parasite in Fitz's mind. And so all of these things are happening, and they keep trying to figure out how everyone knows. And it's, Fitz, for a lot of it, who's been inadvertently feeding information to Justin, one of the
right.
coterie.
Justin's the sneaky one. He's the parasite that nobody really knows is there. Or is it Will? No, Will's the sneaky one. Justin's yeah. Sorry, we're bad. Will is the sneaky one. Justin's one of the other ones. He's just annoying.
He is annoying. Yeah, true. I flipped him.
Yeah, but Will is the sneaky one. It's actually really late in the book when Fitz figures out he's even there, and then you're like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But
he has to actively work to keep him out.
Which takes a lot of energy. Yeah. And the coterie has also pledged their allegiance to Regal, who is trying to basically take power every time we meet him throughout this series. But he's actually been using them to pull that power, to siphon that power off of King Shrewd. So that's compounding what's happening to King Shrewd. King Shrewd's basically dying of what sounds like cancer to me. it talks about, like, there's something eating away at his body, and, like, he's in so much pain all the time that he actually turns to drugs and basically just remains in a fairly numb state most of the time.
Well, I was reading that, and not so much about just the disease. It's just, I'm not even sure if it's actually a disease or if that's how
the skill
is presenting in his body. I'm not really sure if it's an actual disease because he couldn't identify it. He didn't know that was happening until
he just knows that he's in exceptional pain.
And he's drugging. Well, Shade has been drugging the king.
Shade's been drugging him with the help of the Fool to basically ease his demise.
These are the parts that I don't really like about this book. For a lot of it, it's why are you people so dang dumb to not realize that Regal is doing all of these things? And then I realized that she's very good in terms of showing kind of human nature. That we don't really like to be bothered by too much unless we're really forced to. So I feel like unless people are really forced to do something about it, they're more willing to say, let's just see how it plays out. But the king is the only thing standing in the way of Regal getting what he wants. But he ends up being so controlled, and I don't really know what the Fool really expects Fitz to be able to do. And there's a lot of pressure placed on Fitz to come and monitor things with the king, but the king's being monitored by Wallace, his official healer that tattles to Regal. That Fitz really doesn't have a whole lot of access to the king without raising a ruckus. Right. So what is he really supposed to do? Fitz continuously ends up in these ridiculously tough spots. And for no reason other than him in this loyalty pledge that he gave to Verity and King Shrewd to do these things, and a tremendous risk to himself and his happiness. And that really spurs the conversation onto his relationship with Molly. Almost like what happens with the with the Forged Ones, this loss of humanity. And
yeah, there is an interesting parallel between the wit and the skill in that way. And even with the forging. It's all about losing yourself in one way or another, right? So like the forging, you lose all of the emotional constructs that basically frame your humanity, right? And you become stuck in that survivalist mode. And nobody wants that. And then the skill, you become so addicted to it that it physically withers you away to nothing. And then the wit, it whittles away your humanity until you're not human anymore, until you become a beast, as they warn all the time.
As this beast.
Yeah, as this beast. Attest. I mean, I don't have the wit or anything, but I usually know what he wants. Right now, he wants to cuddle.
This is Albus.
Yeah, this is Albus. He's a little feeling deprived because we usually have a little bit of snuggle time when I get home from work, but we came right in to record today. And he does love Rachel because she will let him love all over her, as evidenced by her sweater in the last episode.
Yes. I didn't quite hit it hard enough with the
lint roller. Yeah. So. You know what I'm talking about, cat people. You gotta have that lint roller around all times. And then at the end, Fitz. Okay. So Fitz, I don't even know how to describe what happens to Fitz. What happens to Fitz?
Fitz gets thrown into prison.
Yep.
Regal is looking for a way just to execute him right off the bat. The coastal duchies, those dukes, come to his aid and say, this is your big government moment, saying there are rules and regulations you have to follow. You have to prove, number one, that he used the wit, which is what the accusation was made, that he used the wit to kill the king. And
so that's the thing, that he is the user of the wit, because that's
and that he used it to kill the king.
And that he used it to kill the king. And then we'll let you kill him however you want. Because the rule is, because he is of the Farseer line, he can't be hung. He can't be hung. Which I think is interesting. There's got to be more to that later. There was not in those first two books. So, yeah, it was full on Magna Carta moment, guys. Because they're sitting there in the dungeon watching Fitz. And they're like, no, you can't just kill him. He's like, but he killed the king in front of people. And you're like, He's like, they're like, you got to prove that's what happened. And you got to prove that he used the whip. And, like, they're basically telling him, like, this is the rule of law. You're not the king unless all 6 duchies are president, and we'll just go home and we'll say, oh, we got to go take care of things at our own place. So basically they negotiate with Regal that he's got to prove it. So in the attempts to prove it, he is successful in finding what he feels is fairly sufficient proof. And he uses it to demoralize Fitz more. And, like, so then we get to the point where...
they found when he was in the boat, when he was traveling at the boats, and they fought the forged ones.
Right.
That he was seen with night eyes. And the way the girl saw it, because it was super early in the morning, she was coming to the well to fetch water, that she looks and sees a wolf, and then she looks again, and then it's Fitz. That because obviously Night Eyes had seen her coming and darted off. Yeah. And so she sees this as her... testimony is used as evidence that he absolutely can and will use the wit, but it's just whether or not he's killed the king. So that's what they want Will to break into his mind.
To get him to confess.
So they try to just physically break him down. Mm-hmm. So they just beat the snot out of him. Multiple times. To try and allow Will access. So instead of fighting back, he protects his mind because he has information in there trying to protect Ketatrin. I feel like I totally say her name wrong.
It's fine.
And
so then, with the help of some poison that Burrick slips him, he
it puts him in a state close to death. Very Romeo and Juliet.
It reminded me of the Princess Bride.
Oh, she's just not quite dead yet.
Yeah, he's mostly dead. It's not the same as all the way dead. Mostly dead. But
I was watching Monty Python and the Holy Grail with the kids today. Not quite dead yet. Yes, sorry.
Yes, he's mostly dead. But the interesting part is that he somehow, through the wit, moves his consciousness into Night Eyes' body. So the wolf and Fitz are together in the wolf's body. Chade and Burrick
dig him up.
And that's where it leaves you. They leave you, like, next to this.
That Fitz is somehow returned to his body.
Yeah, Fitz is in his body, and that's it. And that's where it leaves you. And you're just like...
Okay.
So
Regal wins. He gets what he wants, or so he assumes. But he doesn't really. Because Ketatrin's still out there. Potentially still pregnant.
I just was very dissatisfied, I guess.
There was a lot of heads in the sand.
That's true. It's a very middle book. It was very middling. It is a middle book. But, like, the more time has passed, the more I'm like, okay, I want to see where this goes. Like, I want to see... I do want to see where it goes. Because...
You have to know.
The book made me so sad. The book just made me so sad as I was reading. Because evil was triumphing.
This is the Empire Strikes Back book.
All right. Projections. There's so many could-have-beens.
Yes.
So, I don't have any projections for the next book. I'm going into this cold.
Oh, no. Katrikin, to be able to fulfill her... I mean, she's got these ideas about what it is to sacrifice for her kingdom, and I want her to feel like she's done something purposeful. I think she wants to lead a purposeful life. She tries so hard. I want to see how that happens. I'd love to see Burrick and Patience, like, round 2. I would love to see those things. And so... And I would love to see Regal die. So I'm here to read that.
I think that's where I'm torn, is because this book made me so sad that it's hard to rate it in the sense of... I think I'll have a different view of it in context of the third book.
I have decided that this book is a rare steak just because of the Night Eyes. They eat a lot of red meat. And so something about it is registering red meat with me. A well-seasoned, rare steak with a side of broccoli rabe. If you've ever had broccoli rabe is tremendously bitter. Looks kind of like small broccoli with long stems. It's tremendously bitter because there's so much tragedy. So you have this super meaty story. There's a lot that happens. There's a lot to chew on in this book, as you probably clearly saw from this very convoluted video.
We were all over the place. We're sorry.
Yeah, that there's a lot that happens. So it's going to be very full. You might be overly full from reading this book, eating this kind of meal. It's a lot, but you're also going to have that bitter flavor. And some people really love that bitterness. My mom loves broccoli rabe. I do not like it. It's good for you. It's good for you. But that bitterness is hard to swallow sometimes. And with a really full-bodied read, not going to lie. It was a strong book. There's a lot of things that go on. I mean, I still think it's a really well-written book. I don't feel like it was rushed in the end.
I think that's part of what is frustrating is because the story was well told.
It was well told. It just wasn't.
I just didn't like.
It wasn't a happily ever after.
But the more that I sit with
middle book in a trilogy.
That's true. That's true. It was very. We're going down to the bottom sink.
Yes.
All right.
There's no place to go but up, or at least sideways.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know. That's the best I got this book, guys. I just had so many conflicting emotions. And if you've read it before, tell us in the comments what you think. Because how would you rate this one? I'm having a hard time. She has a very beautifully articulated, detailed explanation. I have a hard time reading this book. Help me out in the comments. Let me know if you've read it. What would you?
It's just not a bland book. There's a lot going on.
I didn't think it was bland.
A lot of complexity.
So maybe not peanut butter. I don't know, guys. Help me out. You can help me out in the comments.
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing you next week when we cover book 3. All right?
Assassin's Quest.
Yes. For a mass paperback book, it is quite dense. So it will certainly take us all week to read this one. So, yeah.
See you next time.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.